You probably spent your mornings scrolling real estate listings and seeing the same depressing results. A $300,000 ranch house made of sawdust and plastic siding that looks like it would lose an argument with a summer storm. A tiny suburban box with no land, no privacy, and a mortgage payment that feels like punishment. You are tired of being told that this is the American dream. But here is what most people miss. They only search for houses. They forget that in forgotten corners of the Rust Belt, the Deep South, and the old industrial map, some of the strongest buildings in town are sitting empty. Old banks, fire stations, stone churches, rail depots, warehouses, buildings with real bones. Sometimes the cheapest home in town was never listed as a home at all. Reality check before we start. Converting a commercial building means zoning fights, heating bills, insurance problems, and electrical systems that may be older than your parents. But if you want something stronger than a cardboard suburb, these 10 towns are where the search begins. Number 10. Cairo, Illinois. Cairo sits where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers meet. That location used to matter. For a long time, this town was a gateway, a river hub, and a place where money, cargo, and people moved through the heart of America. You can still see traces of that old importance in the buildings. Today, Cairo feels like a town the world walked away from. But that is exactly why it shows up on a list like this. We are talking about old brick storefronts, former commercial buildings, and late 19th century structures with the kind of materials most new houses will never see. Thick brick walls, iron beams, tall windows, old masonry. Some shells still have marble details, old floors, or vault-like storage areas left over from when these buildings actually mattered to the local economy. In the roughest cases, these properties can appear at prices that sound almost fake compared with normal housing markets. Not because they are easy wins, because they are difficult, neglected, and located in a place most buyers would never search. The fantasy is obvious. You are not buying a basic ranch house with cheap siding. You are buying a building that was meant to survive floods, river trade, and a century of hard use. You can imagine a workshop downstairs, a living space upstairs, and a room big enough to make a normal living room look like a closet. But Cairo sends the bill quickly. The local economy is extremely thin, services are limited, the nearest serious grocery trip may take you across state lines, and the humidity from 2 major rivers will attack brick, wood, plaster, and anything else it can reach. That beautiful river fog through an old window is real. So is the moisture damage behind the wall. Anyone buying here needs to think less like a homeowner and more like a building caretaker. Roof, drainage, masonry, utilities, and structural stability come before decorating anything. For the right buyer, Cairo is a rivertown fortress fantasy. For the wrong buyer, it is a cheap building that will eat every dollar you thought you saved. Number 9. St. Louis, Missouri, specifically North St. Louis. This is not about the polished downtown loft version of the city. This is about the old neighborhoods where St. Louis still has an incredible inventory of historic brick buildings, including former firehouses and municipal structures that look like they were built for another civilization. And in some ways they were. Old firehouses were not built like modern garages. They were built to hold heavy equipment. Horses, engines, crews, heat, water, noise, and constant use. That means huge bay doors, reinforced floors, high ceilings, thick masonry, and open interior space that modern houses almost never offer. For a certain kind of buyer, the appeal is immediate. Ground floor workshop. Upstairs living quarters. Storage for tools, trucks, motorcycles, or whatever else does not fit inside a normal suburban garage. The building already understands hard use. That is the dream. Now comes the invoice. The neighborhoods where these buildings are cheapest are usually cheap for a reason. Crime, vacancy, insurance difficulty, code compliance, and long-term security all become part of the project from day one. You are not just buying a cool building. You are taking responsibility for protecting it, repairing it, and proving to the city that your plan is legal. Turning a former firehouse into a residence can also trigger a long conversation with zoning officials. Change of use, occupancy, fire safety, plumbing, egress, parking, inspections. The building may feel like it should be easy to live in, but the paperwork may strongly disagree. Still, there is a reason these properties attract people. A normal house gives you rooms. An old firehouse gives you a command center. For someone who wants a home, a shop, and a serious amount of space under one roof, North St. Louis has buildings that can make ordinary houses feel painfully flimsy. Just understand the trade. The brick is real. The risk is real too. Number 8. Gary, West Virginia. Not Gary, Indiana. Gary, West Virginia. This was a model coal town built by U.S. Steel in the early 20th century. When the mines were active, the town had infrastructure, schools, offices, and company buildings that were built for a much larger, busier community. Then the economy changed, the people left, the buildings stayed. That is where the asset hunter starts paying attention. In places like this, the opportunity is not always a small house. Sometimes it is an old school, an administrative building, or a multi-story brick institution sitting in a green mountain hollow with more square footage than most people would know what to do with. The scale can be absurd: 10,000 square feet of hallways, classrooms, offices, or gym space. A building large enough to create a home, a workshop, storage, guest rooms, and still have entire areas left untouched. That sounds ridiculous until you compare it with the price of a basic suburban house. But this is where the romance has to slow down. McDowell County is isolated in a way that does not show up properly on a listing page. Services are limited. Roads can be rough. Local infrastructure can be fragile. If the water system has problems, it becomes your problem. If the roof fails on a building that large, the repair bill can feel like a second mortgage. And heating a former school in a West Virginia winter is not a weekend project. It is a lifestyle. You may end up heating only the rooms you use, shutting off entire wings, installing wood heat, and spending more time thinking about insulation than you ever expected. But the appeal is still there. A building like this has mass, history, space, silence. You are not buying something delicate. You are buying a structure built for a company town that expected to last. For the right person, that is the attraction. For everyone else, it is too much building in too remote a place. Number 7. Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown is Steel Valley territory. When the mills shut down, the city took a hit that still shapes the landscape today. But the industrial map did not disappear. It left behind brick warehouses, rail-side buildings, machine shop spaces, and small commercial structures that were built for work, not decoration. That matters. A lot of modern houses are built to look acceptable in photos. These buildings were built to hold weight, noise, heat, equipment, and abuse. Near the old rail lines and industrial edges, you can still find the kind of small brick warehouse that makes a certain buyer stop scrolling. Concrete floors, heavy timber framing, tall doors, open space, sometimes power setups that are far more useful to a workshop owner than anything inside a normal house. This is not the place for someone who wants a white kitchen and a cute porch. This is for the person who wants a building where a lathe, a forge, a lift, or a serious tool collection does not feel out of place. In Youngstown, that fantasy makes sense because the city itself understands industrial use. The culture is not soft. People respect a plan, a truck, and a toolbox more than a mood board. But the risks are not small. Old industrial land can come with environmental problems. Soil contamination, underground tanks, industrial runoff, and mysterious stains on concrete are not character. They are warning signs. Before buying anything, you would need to understand the property history, not just the square footage. Taxes can also surprise you. A cheap purchase price does not automatically mean low carrying costs. Insurance may be difficult. Residential conversion may be complicated. And in a vacant industrial area, security has to be planned before the first load of tools arrives. Still, Youngstown belongs here because it represents a very specific kind of affordable property, not a cute home, a working building you can turn into a home base. For some people, that is better. Number 6. Shamokin, Pennsylvania. Shamokin sits in Pennsylvania's anthracite coal region, built into steep hills with the kind of stone and brick architecture that makes the town feel older than it is. The asset here is not a warehouse. It is the abandoned church. Across older towns like this, congregations have shrunk, moved, merged, or disappeared. What they leave behind can be stunning. Gothic stone churches, bell towers, stained glass, heavy doors, old woodwork, and ceilings that make a normal living room feel like a hallway closet. These buildings were not built cheap. They were built with belief, labor, and materials that would be financially insane to replicate today. That is the hook. For the price of a used truck in some markets, you may find a stone structure with hand-cut walls, a sanctuary large enough to become a dramatic living space, and architectural detail that no subdivision builder could afford to include. But the building may be cheap because the problems are expensive. Heating a church is brutal. 50-foot ceilings do not care about your budget. Roof leaks can hide high above your head. Stained glass needs repair. Stone walls need maintenance. Old plumbing and old electrical systems may have survived decades of limited use, but residential life is a different demand. Then there is the layout. A church was not designed to be a house. It was designed to gather people in one large space. Turning that into bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, storage, insulation, and legal occupancy is a real conversion project. Still, Shamokin has one advantage. People in towns like this often hate watching these buildings collapse. A serious buyer who wants to save a piece of the town's history may get more goodwill than someone buying another empty shell. For the right person, a church conversion is not just housing, it is preservation with a roof leak. Number 5. Detroit, Michigan. Before you close the tab, this is not about trendy downtown lofts. This is about the old neighborhood bank branches. In mid-century Detroit, the city had so much wealth that ordinary neighborhoods had their own serious bank buildings, not little glass boxes. Real stone-clad branches with columns, vaults, thick walls, and an architectural message that said, "Your money is safe here." Some of those buildings are empty now, and that is where the idea gets interesting. An old bank is one of the strangest possible home conversions because it was never meant to feel domestic. It was meant to feel permanent, secure, and slightly intimidating. The walls are heavy, the doors are heavy, the vault may still be there, the windows may be limited. The whole building feels like it is daring the outside world to try something. For a buyer with tools, equipment, collectibles, inventory, or just a strong desire for privacy, that is a powerful fantasy. You are not living in a house, you are living inside a safe. But Detroit does not hand out easy wins. Older bank buildings can be difficult to heat because stone, steel, and masonry are not the same thing as modern insulation. You may need to build a smaller insulated living space inside the larger hall just to make winter manageable. Zoning can also get complicated. A former commercial building may need approvals before it can become residential. The city may care about frontage, occupancy, parking, signage, code upgrades, and whether your plan fits the surrounding area. Security is also part of the budget. Not because the vault is weak, but because vacant-looking buildings attract attention. That is the paradox of the Detroit Bank. The building may be incredibly strong. The project around it may be incredibly demanding. But for someone who wants the most secure, cheap building in town, an old bank branch is hard to ignore. Number 4. Butte, Montana. Butte usually gets attention for miners' cottages and old Western character. But the more interesting properties for this topic are the industrial outbuildings, assay offices, and small commercial structures around the edges of the historic mining district. These were buildings made for work, testing copper, handling equipment, dealing with heat, chemicals, noise, and heavy use. That means brick, stone, thick floors, ventilation, and a level of durability that many houses do not have. For the right buyer, the appeal is obvious: a mountain industrial sanctuary, a place where a shop and a home can exist under the same roof, a place where welding, motorcycles, tools, storage, and rough work do not feel like hobbies squeezed into a two-car garage. The landscape outside gives you mountains. The building inside gives you utility, but Butte demands respect. This is not just a cute historic mining town. Butte is tied to serious environmental history, including Superfund issues. Around old industrial properties, contamination is not a dramatic detail. It is a practical and health-related concern. Soil testing matters. Air filtration matters. Property history matters. You do not buy first and ask questions later. The climate also has opinions. Wind, snow, cold, and exposure can punish roofs, windows, and old masonry. Commercial property classification can affect taxes and insurance until the use is changed properly. In other words, Butte offers the dream and the warning in the same package. The dream is a tough industrial building in a rugged mountain city. The warning is that old industrial land often comes with old industrial consequences. For someone who understands both, Butte is one of the most visually powerful options on the list. Number 3. Flint, Michigan. Flint has become a punchline for people who have never looked at it carefully. But for the asset hunter, Flint is not just a story of decline. It is a city with enormous amounts of leftover civic and social infrastructure. Old community centers, fraternal lodges, union halls, social clubs, buildings that once held dances, meetings, dinners, fundraisers, and the everyday social life of an auto industry city. These are not tiny structures. They can have ballrooms, commercial kitchens, stages, offices, storage rooms, basements, and thick masonry walls. In some cases, a single building gives you more space than 5 normal houses put together. That is the appeal. You could build a private apartment in one section and still have room for a gym, workshop, storage, studio, or business space. A person with a serious project could use the building in ways a normal house would never allow. But Flint requires maturity. The water system remains part of the city's reputation for a reason, and anyone buying property here needs to take filtration, plumbing, and water quality seriously. Heating a massive lodge without a zone-by-zone plan can destroy the budget. Neighborhood conditions can change dramatically from one block to the next. A building that looks like a bargain can become a burden if it sits next to 3 empty shells and a street with no momentum. But there is another side. People who stayed in Flint have seen enough to know the difference between talk and work. A buyer who actually repairs a building, secures it, lights it, and brings use back to it may be doing more than buying cheap space. They may be stabilizing a piece of a block. That does not make it easy, but it gives the project meaning beyond square footage. Number 2. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton is more than a sitcom reference. It is a rail city, a coal city, a place where transportation, industry, and old infrastructure shaped the streets. And that history left behind one of the more interesting non-house assets on this list: old depots. Rail depots have a different personality from warehouses, banks, or churches. They were designed to be seen. They were the public face of the railroad. That means heavy doors, stone foundations, wide porches, old waiting rooms, tall windows, and a kind of craftsmanship that came from an era when train stations mattered. Some of these buildings sit near old lines that have become trails. Others are close to active or semi-active corridors. Either way, they have a sense of place that most cheap houses do not. The fantasy is strong. A former depot as a home, a porch where passengers used to wait, a living room where tickets were once sold, an old platform outside the window. Enough history to make every normal house feel anonymous. But rail property is complicated. You may not own the right-of-way. The railroad, county, or trail authority may have claims near the property. People may legally walk close to the building. Any active rail nearby can mean noise, vibration, and long-term structural stress. Zoning can also be strange because the land was not designed as a private residence. You may need approvals from more offices than expected, and every one of them can slow the project down. Still, Scranton ranks high because depots offer something rare. They are unusual without being impossible. They have charm, structure, and history. They are often smaller and more manageable than schools, churches, or giant industrial buildings. For a buyer who wants a non-house house that still feels human-scaled, a depot may be one of the better bets. Number 1. Rural Kansas and Nebraska. Decommissioned Cold War missile silos and communication bunkers. The ultimate non-house house. From the surface, many of these properties look like almost nothing. A small concrete structure, a fenced parcel, maybe a hatch, maybe a strange shape in the middle of flat farmland. But underground, the story changes. Steel, reinforced concrete, blast-resistant design, rooms built for systems, not comfort, corridors that feel more like infrastructure than architecture. A structure engineered for a world that expected the unthinkable. The famous large missile silos have been discovered and priced accordingly. But smaller communication bunkers, support facilities, and less glamorous underground structures can still appear at prices that are shocking compared with what they cost to build originally. The appeal is obvious: privacy, silence, security, a steady underground temperature, no neighbors close enough to care, no subdivision committee, no one complaining about the color of your siding because the siding is buried under 6 feet of earth. But this is also the most extreme option on the list. These structures flood. Groundwater is a constant enemy. Electrical systems can be ancient. Ventilation can be complicated. Water and waste may be entirely your responsibility. insurance and financing can be strange. And living without natural light is not just a design preference, it changes how a person feels over time. Some people adapt. Some people learn very quickly that a bunker is more appealing on YouTube than it is at 2 a.m. in January. That is why this is number one, but also the biggest warning. It is the purest expression of the non-house idea. It is also the least forgiving. Out here, you are not buying a cute fixer-upper. You are buying distance, concrete, silence, responsibility, and the ultimate leave me alone button. In a country where ordinary houses keep getting more expensive, more fragile, and more controlled, these buildings explain why some people stop searching for houses altogether. They start searching for structures, because sometimes the cheapest home in town is not a home yet. It is an old bank, a firehouse, a depot, a church, a warehouse, a bunker, a building everyone else ignored because it looked too strange, too hard, or too much trouble. And maybe they were right, but for the right kind of buyer, that trouble is exactly where the opportunity begins.